Two parents from Western Mass are carrying on their son's legacy through an organization he started before he died from fentanyl poisoning. Western Mass News reporter Glenn Kittle has the story.
Paula and Phil Young are attempting to triumph through tragedy after their son, Andrew Gagnon, died after being poisoned by fentanyl.
This is very important to us to bring awareness in reference to fentanyl and xylazine because it's rampant out there.
Paula and Phil Young tell Western Mass News their son was given marijuana by a friend that had been laced with fentanyl. Paula Young says it's a story known all too well by the families whose lives have been affected by the deadly drug.
50% of the people who are being poisoned across the United States today are being given something by someone they actually know.
Before Andrew's tragic death, he started an organization called Achieve Greatness that was originally meant to serve as a youth basketball camp where Gagnon would coach and mentor local kids. After his death, his parents kept the name and turned their tragedy into purpose by raising awareness of the dangers of fentanyl while still keeping the organization's core foundation intact.
So, as part of that nonprofit, we have a couple of goals, and one of them is to provide basketball camp scholarships to the youth of Massachusetts, but also to create an education and awareness on the dangers of fentanyl and how it's out here. And there are very many young people passing away from this.
By the numbers, the CDC reports fentanyl poisoning kills more than 300 people in the United States every day. Paula Young hopes their foundation can keep other parents from sharing the same grief.
We want to save your children. We want to save you. We do not want you to be on a billboard, as you see here in the back, 30 lives lost unbeknownst to them because of fentanyl.
Reporting in Monson, Glenn Kittle, Western Mass News.